Have you ever seen a powerful man's world fall apart with just one word? I have. The word was daddy. Picture this. A strong real estate tycoon stands still in a hospital hallway, dressed in an expensive suit, watching his son take his first step. Instead of running to his father, the 18-month-old boy wobbles toward a woman he barely knows. "He's been waiting for you," she says softly. And in that moment, Ryan Matthews, the man who owned much of Manhattan, realized he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. This is a story about how a father's cold heart was warmed by the love of his child and how a wise woman's guidance changed their lives. Sometimes, losing everything is the path to finding what you really need. But let's go back to where it all started, not in that hospital, but in a grand room just down the hall, where 200 of New York's elite were about to see a spectacular event. The sparkling chandeliers reflected off the marble floor as Ryan adjusted his cufflinks. At 38, he confidently entered every room, tall and sharp, with eyes that seemed to see through everything. At tonight's charity gala, he was set to be recognized as Manhattan's top real estate leader. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice resonated through the microphone, filled with the confidence of someone who never knew failure. "Success is not just luck. It's about sacrifice." The crowd erupted in applause. They believed in him. Here stood a man who built an empire from nothing, who could turn empty lots into million-dollar projects. But if they could have looked into a penthouse across town, they would have seen the true cost of his success. A baby monitor buzzed to life in the quiet. On the screen, 18-month-old Henry sat alone in a nursery filled with expensive toys. The child's mouth opened, forming sounds that should have changed everything. "Da-da," he whispered, his little hands reaching toward a door that never opened. In that ballroom, Ryan's phone buzzed with an alert. His son had spoken his first word, the moment every parent dreams of, but he glanced at the notification and swiped it away. The applause grew louder, the deals became bigger, and the gap between father and son widened, a distance that money could not close. Little did Ryan know that in 18 months, a woman with kind hands would enter their lives and change everything. His son's cries would help many families heal, and the empire he was building would fall, making way for something more meaningful. Yet first, he had to lose everything. This is the tale of a man who had it all but lacked the one thing that could save him. It shows how love, real and transformative, can turn the broken into the strongest. This journey will break your heart before it mends, reminding you that the most important words come not in boardrooms, but from a child who believes you're worth waiting for. Ryan Matthews built his empire on a shaky foundation. Each morning began early with coffee and news reports. His penthouse felt more like a museum than a home, filled with cold perfection and empty success. Each day followed the same routine: shower, suit, briefcase, and a glance at the sleeping baby monitor. A quick nod to Maria, the nanny, marked their interaction. No warm words, just the sound of hushed efficiency. His assistant Rebecca filled him in during the elevator ride. Investors were coming at 10 o'clock, meetings at 2, and there was a call from Henry's doctor. "Take care of it," Ryan interrupted, already focused on stock numbers on his phone. In boardrooms throughout the city, Ryan's reputation as a fearless negotiator was well known, but the part about being a father was rarely mentioned. At night, as the city slept and deals were done, Ryan would pour himself a drink and watch families stroll through Central Park from his high-rise windows. He would see fathers pushing strollers and children playing, and he would see his own reflection, a ghost of the father he never learned to be. The security system captured everything about Henry's days, each moment a digital record of a childhood Ryan was too scared to witness. Maria, the nanny for 8 months, saw Henry grow and witnessed the child searching eyes for someone who wasn't there. "He looks for you," she told Ryan one evening. "He thinks you might come when a door opens." Ryan paused, feeling the weight of her words, but he replied, "That's what I pay you for." Maria's expression softened, holding a mix of pity and understanding. "I can take care of him, but I can't be his father." Her words hung in the air, reminding Ryan of the truth he kept avoiding. Success required sacrifice, and real love was the hardest sacrifice of all. The call came in the early hours, breaking the silence. Maria's voice shook as she said, "I'm sorry to call so late, but Henry has been crying for 3 hours. He's waiting for someone. Ryan's heart raced, and he closed his eyes, picturing his son's innocent face. "He'll be right there," he whispered. The ride to the nursery felt long and heavy, and with each floor, Ryan's walls began to crumble. By the time Ryan reached Henry's room, his hands were trembling. The nursery glowed softly with nightlights shaped like stars. Henry sat in his crib, tears running down his cheeks, his tiny hands reaching for the doorway. When he spotted Ryan, his crying stopped suddenly, replaced by a look of pure amazement. "Hey there, little buddy." Ryan's voice cracked as he moved closer to the crib. "Daddy's here." Henry's face brightened like the sunrise after a long night. His little arms stretched upward, fingers reaching for Ryan. Ryan picked up his son, feeling a heavy mix of missed moments settle into his arms. The child instantly relaxed, resting his head perfectly on Ryan's shoulder. Henry's small fist held onto Ryan's shirt tightly, as if he feared his father might vanish again. "I'm sorry," Ryan whispered into Henry's soft hair. "I'm really sorry I haven't been here." They stood together in the gentle light, father and son, connecting with each other's heartbeat. For the first time in a long while, the penthouse felt more than just a place to sleep. It felt like home. But morning came too soon, bringing the weight of responsibilities and duties. Ryan placed Henry back in his crib, kissed his forehead, and returned to his busy life. The moment faded away like a dream, leaving behind only a hint of what could be if Ryan chose love over success. Camila Rodriguez finished her shift at Mount Sinai Children's Hospital at 6:45 a.m. Her scrubs were still damp from the tears of a mother whose child had taken their first steps after months of therapy. The sunrise painted the city in golden colors, full of possibility, but Camila's mind was racing toward her next task. At 28, she walked with the quiet confidence of someone who found joy in the smallest miracles. Her dark hair was tied back in a neat bun, and her warm brown eyes could soften the hardest heart. She had a talent for seeing hope where others saw problems. During the subway ride to the Upper East Side, she looked over the case file Rebecca had sent her. Henry Matthews, 18 months old, showed signs of developmental delays and had a hard time with communication and social skills. But Camila understood that this wasn't just a child needing therapy. This was a child needing love. The lobby of Ryan's penthouse could intimidate visitors with its marble floors and crystal lights, but Camila saw it as a space waiting for human connection. The doorman recognized her and directed her to the private elevator. 42nd floor, he said with a grin. "Mr. Matthews likes punctuality." Camila arrived right at 9 a.m. She knocked gently but confidently. The door opened to reveal a man known for his accomplishments. He was tall, dressed sharply, with eyes that seemed to see right through people. "Miss Rodriguez," Ryan said with a firm, businesslike tone, "I have 15 minutes before my next meeting. Please tell me how you plan to help my son." His words felt like a challenge. Camila met his gaze steadily, seeing beyond his confident exterior to the worry hidden beneath. "Mr. Matthews," she replied softly, "children are not things to be fixed. They are whole people learning to trust those around them. My job isn't to fix Henry. It's to help him feel that he is worth loving." A flicker of surprise crossed Ryan's face, but it disappeared quickly, leaving Camila to wonder if she had imagined it. "Henry's in the nursery," Ryan said brusquely. "Maria will show you around. I'll be in my study if you need anything." "What I need," Camila said gently, "is for you to tell me about your son. What makes him laugh? What comforts him when he is scared? What does he love most?" Ryan's expression went blank, as if struck. For a moment, the successful businessman vanished, revealing a man who realized he didn't know the answers to simple questions about his own child. "Maria can tell you those things. She spends more time with him," he replied finally. "But you're his father," Camila said, her voice free of judgment but filled with gentle truth. "You're the one he has been waiting for." Her words lingered between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Ryan cleared his throat, adjusted his tie, and hid behind his professional demeanor again. 15 minutes, he repeated. "Then I have a conference call." Camila nodded, understanding that this meeting was about more than just Henry's therapy. It was about a father seeing his son and himself more clearly than ever before. The nursery looked like a showcase of expensive loneliness. Every toy was top of the line, every surface spotless. But the most important detail was missing. The child at the center of it all, surrounded by things but longing for connection. Henry looked up when Camila entered, his large eyes taking in this new person with the weariness of someone who had learned not to hope too much. At 18 months, he should have been babbling, exploring, and playing with everything. Instead, he sat quietly with a toy truck, holding it as if it were a shield against loneliness. The silence in the room was heavy, not the peaceful calm of a sleeping child, but the oppressive quiet of isolation. The costly toys lay scattered around him like reminders of a childhood that had not truly started. "Hello, Henry," Camila said softly, sitting cross-legged on the floor a few feet away. She did not reach for him or force interaction. She simply sat, her presence calm and patient like the morning light. Henry's small shoulders eased back and he relaxed in her presence, loosening his grip on the truck just enough to show he might trust her. Maria, the day nanny, observed from a distance like a worried bird. She was a kind woman in her 50s who genuinely cared for Henry, but her concern had turned anxious, as if she felt responsible for a situation she couldn't solve. "He's been like this since I arrived," she whispered, her voice heavy with months of effort. "Quiet and distant. The pediatrician says he is developing normally physically, but emotionally." She shrugged helplessly, her hands gesturing to express all the ways love can sometimes go wrong, even with good intentions. Dr. Margaret Torres, the pediatrician, was well respected, known for her work with children from wealthy families who trusted her with their most precious gifts. But Henry's case puzzled her. All his milestones were within normal limits. He could walk. He moved like a typical kid his age, and his thinking seemed normal too. But something special was missing. There was a spark that wasn't there, something that should have made him shine. She had written in her notes that he seemed distant and showed little social interaction. It looked like he had learned not to try, and she suggested that he see a specialist who worked with attachment issues. Camila nodded, paying close attention to Henry. He looked at her every now and then, quick glances that showed he was curious, but also careful. She could see the intelligence in his eyes, and the wish for connection that he had hidden under a calm surface, which was sad for someone so young. Camila was familiar with this kind of sadness. It wasn't the loud trauma that made the news, but the quiet kind of hurt that came from neglect. Not the mean kind, but the kind that came from well-meaning people who just didn't know how to show love properly. "I'm going to be here for a while," she said in a friendly tone, like she was chatting with an adult. "I brought some books if you'd like to see them, and I have some pictures of animals that make funny sounds." Henry loosened his grip on the toy truck a little, the first sign that her words were reaching him. Camila took out a small photo album, its pages soft and worn from being looked at by many children. This book showed it had been cared for, with corners bent from little fingers and pages a bit sticky from snacks. She opened it to a picture of a giraffe, its long neck reaching for leaves under an African sunset. "This is Gerald," she said, her voice warm and soothing. "He's tall and likes to eat leaves from the tops of trees. He makes a sound like this." She hummed softly, a sound that filled the air and seemed to calm anyone who listened. For the first time, Henry looked right at her, not just a quick glance, but real eye contact that lasted for a few moments. In that brief time, Camila saw so much potential and kindness in him, trapped behind walls he shouldn't have needed to build. "You have beautiful eyes," she said gently. "They're the same color as coffee with cream. My grandmother used to make coffee like that every morning, warm and sweet. She would let me have a little sip sometimes, and it made me feel grown up." This was a true memory, not planned, but it had a way of reaching straight to the heart, especially for a child who was cautious of words. Henry put down the truck and crawled closer, drawn to something in her voice that felt safe. When he got near, he stopped and sat quietly, watching her as if trying to remember her face. His small hands rested on his knees, and Camila noticed the way he held himself, ready to pull back at the first sign of being let down but brave enough to hope for now. "I see you," Camila whispered, her words carrying a special promise. "I see all of you, and you are perfect just as you are." From the doorway, Ryan watched without being noticed. His assistant had opened the door a bit when she brought Camila in. His son, who usually ignored him, was leaning toward this stranger with a willingness that made Ryan feel a deep mix of longing and sadness. The difference was striking. When Ryan tried to talk to Henry, the boy often looked through him. But here, with this woman, Henry was engaged and full of life in a way Ryan had never witnessed. Maria found him there 20 minutes later, still watching, his hand against the doorframe, as if trying to hold on to this moment. His usual good posture had relaxed a bit, and there was a vulnerable look in his shoulders that made Maria feel for both father and son. "She's different," Maria said quietly, carefully choosing her words. She had worked with many wealthy families and learned how to observe their private struggles. She doesn't try to change him. She just accepts him. Ryan nodded, unable to speak because of the tightness in his throat. Inside the nursery, Camila was showing Henry how to make animal sounds, her laughter mixing with his quiet giggles like sunlight breaking through clouds. It was the first time Ryan had heard his son laugh, really laugh, with a joy that children should have. The sound hit him hard. His son was capable of happiness but didn't feel safe expressing it around him. This realization was both painful and hopeful. Painful because it confirmed his fears about being a parent. Hopeful because it meant Henry wasn't lost. He just needed someone who knew how to reach him. "Maybe," Maria said gently, choosing her words carefully. "She can teach you how to accept him too." The words settled into Ryan's heart, making him realize he couldn't confuse love with acceptance. He loved Henry and wanted the best for him, but watching Henry thrive under Camila's care made Ryan question if he had truly seen his son for who he was. Inside the nursery, Camila moved on to a picture of an elephant. "This is Esther," she said. "She's wise and remembers everything important. She makes a sound like this." The noise she made was so silly that Henry erupted in giggles, his little body shaking with laughter. Ryan closed his eyes, committing the sound of his son's joy to memory, a treasure he knew he would need during harder times. When he opened them again, Camila was looking straight at the door, her eyes meeting his through the tiny opening with understanding, not judgment. She had known he was there all along, sharing this connection for Henry, but also for the father watching from the side. Instead of feeling embarrassed, he felt a new kind of hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Camila became a bridge for Henry, helping him connect with a world he had been too afraid to explore. She came every morning at 9 o'clock, bringing a sense of possibility that changed the plain nursery into a place of wonder. Her way of caring was different from those before her. While others focused on activities and entertainment, Camila simply focused on being present. Instead of using games to connect with Henry, she sat with him, giving her full attention as a gift. "Today we're going to practice being brave," she announced one morning, sitting cross-legged on the floor while Henry played with blocks nearby. He loved organizing them by color and size, showing a carefulness that would have made his dad proud if he had seen it. "Being brave doesn't mean we're not scared," Camila continued, speaking in a calm manner. "It means we do important things even when we're scared." Henry looked up from his blocks, his expression serious. At 19 months old, he understood more than he could say, and Camila's words touched something deep inside him. Fear was not new to him. He felt it regularly, unsure if the people around him would stay or go. "Your daddy is very brave," she continued, noticing Henry's reaction to the word daddy. His face brightened instantly with recognition and longing. "He builds tall buildings and makes important choices, but I think there's something else he wants to be brave about." Whenever she mentioned his father, Henry responded with more energy. His eyes sparkled, as if the word daddy opened a hidden part of him. But there was sadness, too, a longing that seemed too deep for a child so young to feel. From his study down the hall, Ryan listened to their conversations through the intercom system he had never turned off. It was meant for security when Henry was a baby, but now it was Ryan's secret way to enter his son's world. Camila's voice came through like a lifeline, touching parts of him he had forgotten, stirring feelings he had buried under years of work and emotional walls. "What do you think your daddy dreams about?" Camila asked Henry one afternoon while they looked at a book together. It was an old book she had brought from home, well-loved and worn. I think he dreams about being a father who knows all your favorite things, she said. The kind who reads you stories and teaches you to ride a bike. Henry made sounds that were almost words and pointed to an illustration of a father and child in a park, showing a man pushing a laughing toddler on a swing. It was a scene of joy that seemed distant from Henry's own experiences. Camila felt a pang of sadness seeing his desire for that connection. I think he dreams about that too, she whispered, kissing the top of Henry's head, inhaling the soft scent of his baby shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups just need help remembering how to make dreams come true. These daily moments became the center of Henry's world. He would wait eagerly by the window each morning, watching for Camila with excitement, making sounds that seemed to echo her name in his own way. When she finally arrived, he jumped and bounced, full of joy. Camila brought a gentle structure to their time together, making it feel like play. They had circle time where she sang songs and Henry clapped along. They had story time with her reading in a lively way, making even simple books feel like adventures. They explored different textures and sounds, encouraging his natural curiosity. Most importantly, they had talking time, where Camila shared stories from her life, filling the air with words and warmth. When I was little, she said one day, sitting on the floor with him, my grandmother told me that everyone has a special light inside, but sometimes it gets hidden when people are scared or sad. She said the most important thing we can do is help others find their light again. Henry listened intently to her words, as if collecting them for later. His vocabulary grew quickly under her gentle guidance, although he was selective about when and with whom he spoke. One Thursday morning in November, the weather turned cold, and Henry was fussier than usual. He cried whenever Camila tried to leave the room, showing a clinginess that spoke of a deeper need. Nothing seemed to soothe him, not toys or songs, and even silly faces that usually made him laugh didn't help. He calmed a little when she held him, but the tears would return right away when she turned her attention elsewhere. "What is it, sweet boy?" Camila asked, holding him close as he clung to her in distress. "What do you need?" She ran through her mental checklist. He wasn't hungry, his diaper was clean, and he didn't appear sick, but something was clearly bothering him. Henry pulled back and looked up at her with serious eyes that seemed wise beyond his age. He opened and closed his mouth, trying to find the courage to say something important. And then, for the first time since they met, he spoke a clear, unmistakable word. Daddy. The word hung in the air, full of longing and hope. It expressed all a child's pure need for his father, clear of adult worries about fear or letdowns. It was a simple want, powerful and unfiltered. Camila felt tears fill her eyes and drew him closer, understanding washing over her like sunlight breaking through the clouds. It was clear that Henry needed something special. No amount of care or love from Camila could fill the empty space in his heart that was meant for his father. "Yes, baby." "Do you want Daddy?" Camila asked. Henry nodded excitedly, his tiny hands patting her cheeks to make sure she really understood. This was important for him. "Daddy," he said again, more determined this time, as if calling him could bring him right there. "Okay," Camila whispered with a mix of emotion and strength. "Let's go find Daddy." She carried Henry down the hall to Ryan's study, her heart racing at the thought of what was coming. This was more than just a child asking for his father. It was a moment that could change everything for both of them, if Ryan was ready to embrace it. The penthouse had a modern look that was often admired in magazines, but it felt cold and empty to Camila. As she walked with Henry through the spotless hallways, she noticed how little there was to show that a child lived there. The walls were decorated with pricey art that revealed nothing about the people living there. The furniture looked nice, but it seemed chosen more for looks than comfort. Through a slightly open door, they saw Ryan at his desk, focused intently on the phone. He was deep in a discussion about business deals. His voice had the tone of someone used to being listened to, clearly laying out important points. "The Singapore facility can handle a lot, but we need to adjust the labor contracts," he was saying. "Daddy," Henry called out, this time loud enough for Ryan to hear. The sound broke through Ryan's concentration like a sudden shock. He looked up to see Henry reaching towards him, his arms open wide. The word Daddy felt like a gift Ryan had never expected, The phone felt heavy in Ryan's hand, but all he could see was his son, asking for him with a longing that melted away the defenses he had built around his heart. "I'll call you back," he said softly into the phone, putting it down without waiting for a reply. The important business could wait. His son needed him now. The three of them stood there in a moment frozen in time. Henry reached for his father with hope, while Camila gently held the space between them like a guardian. Ryan was caught between the world he had built and the love he was afraid to accept. "He's been asking for you all morning," Camila said quietly, her voice soft and encouraging. "I think he wants to spend some time with you." Ryan's hands shook slightly as he reached out to his son, his instinct from when Henry was a baby battling with the distance he had kept. But Henry came eagerly to him, fitting perfectly against his chest, as if they were meant for this moment. Henry rested his head on Ryan's shoulder, and suddenly everything felt different. Ryan could feel Henry's heartbeat, the comforting scent of his hair, and the complete trust in the way Henry relaxed against him. This was what he had been missing all along, moments of pure love. "Hey there, little man," Ryan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy's here." Henry made a happy sound, gripping Ryan's shirt. He had waited for this moment not just today, but for months. Now that it was happening, he held on tightly. They stayed like that for a long time, sharing heartbeats. Camila watched from the door with tears in her eyes, seeing the change beginning in Ryan, a breaking down of his walls as fear gave way to something deeper. This was why she did her work, for moments like this when love broke through the barriers people build around themselves. "I don't know how to do this," Ryan said softly, his honesty raw and vulnerable. "I don't know how to be what he needs." The truth hung in the air between them. Here was a man who was successful and respected, now feeling like just a father who loved his son, but was afraid to fail him. "You don't have to know everything," Camila replied gently, stepping a bit closer. "You just have to show up. That's what love is, being there even when you're scared." Henry looked up at his father, reaching up to touch Ryan's face. His small fingers traced Ryan's jaw with wonder, mapping a bond they were starting to build. In that moment, Ryan felt all the missed opportunities, the stories not read, the hugs not given. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Henry. "I'm really sorry I haven't been here." Understanding seemed to flash in Henry's eyes, and he pressed his forehead against Ryan's, a simple gesture of forgiveness that helped Ryan let go of the last of his fears. Tears streamed down Ryan's face as he held his son close, feeling the walls he had built around his heart fall away. This was what he had been keeping himself from, an overwhelming love that could change everything about who he thought he was. "Can you teach me?" Ryan asked Camila, his voice full of emotion. "Can you teach me how to be his father?" Camila smiled, the kind of smile that could heal hearts and bring hope. "You already are his father, Ryan. You just need to trust yourself the way he trusts you." From that moment on, everything shifted. Ryan made calls to clear his afternoon schedule, shaking things up at the office. Meetings were pushed aside, and for the first time in months, he sat on the nursery floor with Henry, playing with blocks and reading stories, learning the sound of his laughter and the warmth of his small hand in his. But the outside world doesn't stop for personal moments. As Ryan started to understand the father he could be, the business he had built demanded his attention. The deal in Singapore was falling apart piece by piece because he was away from important discussions, which worried the investors who relied on his strong focus. The first sign of trouble came in an email from his business partner David Castellano, a friend from their days at Harvard, but whose patience with personal issues was running thin. "I need you in the office right away. The Singapore investors are questioning your commitment. This deal means too much to lose." Ryan read the email while sitting in Henry's nursery, his son peacefully sleeping in his arms. The difference between the urgent tone of the email and the calm presence of his child felt heavy, showing how the two worlds were pulling him apart. "You can't just vanish, Ryan," David said. When Ryan finally returned David's increasingly worried calls, David's stressed tone revealed the hours spent trying to reassure nervous investors and fixing a crisis that Ryan's absence had caused. "We have too much at stake. The Singapore project alone is worth $2 billion. You can't let personal issues derail everything we've worked for." Hearing personal issues struck Ryan hard. "You mean my son?" "I mean the business that supports your son," David replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "The business that pays for your home and your lifestyle. Do you think being a good father means throwing away everything you've built?" The words hit Ryan deeply because they echoed his own fears. Was he being careless? Was he letting feelings get in the way? Was he risking his son's future for the moment spent playing with him? Those questions lingered as he watched Henry sleep that night, his son's face serene in the soft glow of the nightlight. In the morning, Ryan would have to choose: the boardroom or the nursery, the deal that could secure Henry's future, or the time that might strengthen their bond. But when Henry woke up, reached for him with a smile that could brighten anyone's day, and spoke his first word of the day, "Daddy," with joy and trust, Ryan realized that some things were worth more than money. The choice, when it came, was simpler, yet harder than he expected. It was the choice between the man he had been and the man he wanted to become, between the father he remembered from his childhood and the father Henry deserved. It was the choice between success and what truly mattered, between building a business and creating a life full of meaning. And for the first time in his adult life, Ryan understood what was most important. The crisis arrived on a gray December morning as the city wore the beauty of winter. Snow fell softly against the penthouse windows, each flake a reminder of time passing. Ryan was teaching Henry to stack blocks, amazed by his son's focus and determination when Rebecca rushed into the nursery with alarming news. "Ryan, we have a problem," she said, her usually calm demeanor shaken. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she held a folder of documents. "The Singapore investors are backing out. They say if you don't fly to Jakarta by tonight, they'll walk away from the whole deal." Ryan felt the blood drain from his face as he realized what she was saying. The Singapore project wasn't just another deal. It was the foundation of his company's future. It represented everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. "How long will I be gone?" he asked, his voice strained. "At least 2 weeks, maybe a month," Rebecca replied quietly. "You'd need to rebuild trust, renegotiate terms, show them you're serious about the partnership. They're talking about giving the project to Chen Industries if you don't show up tonight." Chen Industries was his biggest rival, always waiting for a moment of weakness. Henry, sensing the tension in the room, looked up from his blocks with concern. "Daddy," he called, his voice still new and sweet, but carrying an unspoken worry. Ryan's heart sank. They were just starting to build their bond, and now he faced leaving for what felt like forever. But the weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him heavily. 20 years of work, hundreds of employees, thousands of investors. How could he choose between his son's future and his needs today? "I need to think," he finally said, his voice hollow. "There's no time to think," Rebecca urged, desperation in her voice. "The car to the airport leaves in 3 hours. Your bags are already packed. The board is meeting to discuss plans." Plans. The word hung in the air, heavy with what it implied. They were already considering replacing him if he didn't get on that plane. That afternoon, while Henry napped, Ryan sat in his study, staring at the contract that could either save or ruin everything. The numbers felt overwhelming: billions, thousands of jobs, years of effort. Everything he had built his life around reduced to signatures on paper. The phone rang every few minutes. David, his business partner, alternating between pleading and urgency. The board members, each thinking about their own futures. The investors were already making backup plans, circling around like vultures. "Ryan, you must understand." David's voice was filled with panic during their fourth call. "If you don't get on that plane, we lose everything. Not just the Singapore deal, but the Tokyo expansion, the London project, everything. The dominoes are starting to fall. Chen Industries is ready to step in with better offers." "I understand the stakes," Ryan replied quietly, watching Henry sleep on the monitor. His son's face was calm in sleep, untouched by the turmoil around them. "Do you?" David questioned, his voice breaking. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're choosing a child's nap over everything we've worked for." The words felt like a sharp pain in Ryan's chest. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing? Wasn't he putting his own feelings ahead of his duties? Camilla found Ryan at 3 o'clock, sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. He looked more lost than she'd ever seen him. She had been working with Henry in the playroom when she heard the loud voices and frantic phone calls, the sense of trouble that had taken over their usually calm home. "Talk to me," she said softly, taking a seat across from him. Her presence felt like a safe place amid his worries. "I have to choose," Ryan said quietly, not looking up. "Between everything I've built and the father I want to be, between Henry's future and his present, between the life I planned and the life I want." The choice seemed too heavy for him. On one side, he saw 20 years of hard work and the security for his son. On the other side, there was a small boy who had just learned to say "Daddy," and who was starting to trust that his father wouldn't go away. "What does your heart tell you?" Camila asked gently. "My heart tells me to stay," Ryan replied, finally meeting her gaze, tears close to falling. "But my head tells me that's selfish, that I'm letting feelings cloud my judgment. If I lose everything, what kind of father am I then? What kind of life can I give Henry if I can't take care of him? What kind of man turns his back on his responsibilities for love?" Camilla finished softly. The word hung between us like a bridge. Love. It seemed simple, yet it meant so much. "David says it's choosing a child's nap time over everything we've built," Ryan said, tasting bitterness in his words. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm being naive, thinking that love is enough." Camilla leaned forward, her voice calm but strong. "Ryan, Henry doesn't need your money. He needs you, your love, your time. Those are the things that will shape the man he becomes. Money can buy things, but it can't give him a dad who truly sees him." "But if I lose the company," Ryan started to say. "You will find another way," Camilla interrupted. "You're smart and determined. You built one empire. You can do it again if you need to. But you can't recreate these early childhood years for Henry. These moments don't come again." Ryan looked out the window at the city below. Men were making decisions based on money and profits, valuing success over presence, achievement over connection. He had been one of them so long that he had forgotten there was another way to live. "What if I'm not enough?" he whispered, sharing the worry he had carried since Henry was born. "What if I fail?" "You are enough," Camilla said with total confidence. "You're becoming the father he needs. I see it in how he looks at you." The words settled in Ryan like seeds taking root. He thought about the man he had been 6 months ago, successful and respected, but very lonely. Then he thought about who he was becoming, learning and growing, loved by a child who saw him as a hero. "The board will never forgive me," he said softly. "They don't tuck Henry in at night," Camilla replied wisely. "They don't see his joy when you walk into a room. They won't be there for his first words or steps. You will be. That's a privilege worth choosing." Then the phone rang. It was the chairman of the board, Thomas Whitmore, a man who had never called Ryan directly in 15 years. "Matthews," he said, his voice cold, "I'm going to be clear. If you're not on that plane tonight, the board will vote to remove you as CEO. You'll be finished in this industry. No one will work with a man who walks away from a major deal. You'll be a cautionary tale." Ryan closed his eyes, feeling the pressure of 2 decades of work on him. "What good is owning the world if you lose your way?" he finally asked. There was a long silence before Whitmore replied, "Your funeral," and hung up. The next hours felt endless. By 5 o'clock, news outlets reported a crisis in Matthews' empire. Calls flooded in from reporters and others eager to witness the decline. Ryan turned off his phone and sat in Henry's nursery, watching his son sleep peacefully. The rise and fall of Henry's tiny chest, the way his fist gripped a stuffed animal, and the trust on his face were what truly mattered. Camilla found him as the sun set, casting a warm glow. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. "About the company?" "No," Ryan replied, surprised by his own certainty. "About not making the right choice sooner." "You made the choice, and that's what counts," Camilla said. "Did I?" Ryan asked, doubt in his voice. "Did I make the right choice or just give up everything for feelings?" "Look at him," Camilla said, nodding toward Henry. Ryan looked at his son. Even in sleep, Henry looked peaceful and secure, the tension gone from his face. 6 months ago, that little boy hardly spoke, avoided eye contact, and seemed lost. Today he laughed while you read his favorite book, Camila said. He told me you're his best daddy. He asked if he could help you build something. That change happened because you chose to be there for him. You chose to see him, to love him, and to believe in him. The words filled Ryan with a sense of peace. He thought about all the moments he almost missed. Henry's first tower of blocks, his first joke, and his first unexpected hug. These were moments that money couldn't buy or plans couldn't recreate. But what about his future? Ryan asked, still worried about practical matters. What opportunities could I give him? What about his present? Camila replied gently. What about the person he is becoming because he has a father who is there for him? The confidence he is gaining from knowing he is loved, the kindness he is learning from being treated with kindness. Those things will help him far more than any trust fund. Just then, Henry stirred in his crib and opened his eyes. For a moment, he looked a bit confused in the dim light. Then he spotted Ryan and Camila nearby, and his face lit up with a smile that could heal any hurt. "Daddy," he said sleepily, reaching out with his little arms. "I stayed," Ryan said, lifting Henry from the crib and holding him close. "Daddy is not going anywhere." Henry snuggled against his father's chest, and Ryan felt something change inside him. The last doubts faded away. This was where he belonged. This was what he was meant to do. Instead of focusing on his own achievements, he wanted to build a relationship with this amazing little person who loved him, despite his flaws. "Are you hungry?" Henry asked, very practical. "What do you want for dinner, buddy?" Ryan asked. "Pizza," Henry declared with the excitement only children can have for simple things. "Pizza it is," Ryan agreed, carrying his son toward the kitchen. "Extra cheese," Henry chimed in, giggling about their little routine as they made dinner together. Henry helped by pointing out the ingredients and commenting on each step. Ryan felt a peace he had never felt in meetings or negotiations. This was success, a child's laughter in a warm kitchen, small hands reaching for everything they could touch, and the absolute certainty of being exactly where he was meant to be. The plane to Jakarta was set to leave at 8:30 p.m. by 6 o'clock. Ryan still hadn't made a final decision, even though his heart had chosen a long time ago. He sat on the floor of Henry's playroom while his son built amazing towers with wooden blocks, unaware of the problems in the adult world outside. "Daddy, sad?" Henry asked, climbing into Ryan's lap with a worried look on his face. The question hit Ryan hard, not just because it was direct, but because it was filled with love. Here was a child, despite his own challenges in communication, reaching out to comfort him. "Daddy's thinking about something important," Ryan said, holding his son close and inhaling the sweet smell of baby shampoo. "Something that matters to both of us." Henry patted Ryan's cheek with his little hand. The gesture was so loving and trusting that it nearly broke Ryan's heart. How could he leave this child? How could he walk away from the most important relationship in his life? Then the phone rang one last time. David's voice sounded tight and anxious. "Ryan, the car is waiting downstairs," he said quickly. "The investors are worried about your commitment. Chen Industries is meeting with Whitmore right now. If you don't show up tonight, we could lose everything 20 years of work." The way David dismissed his relationship with Henry, reducing it to just needing a babysitter, made it all clear to Ryan. This thinking was what led him to miss so much time in his son's life while focusing on building an empire at the cost of his happiness. "I know what is at stake," Ryan replied quietly, his voice steady. "Then get in the car," David urged. "We can deal with personal matters later. You'll have time for family once we save the company. You can be a good father after we secure the future." Ryan looked down at Henry, who was arranging his blocks carefully. The child looked up and smiled, not a smile for business or favors, but the pure, unconditional smile of someone who loved him just for being himself. "No," Ryan said into the phone, his voice growing stronger. "There won't be time later. There's only now, this moment, and I won't miss it. I've already missed too many moments." "Ryan, you're making a mistake," David said, desperation in his tone. "You're letting your feelings cloud your judgment. Think about everything you're giving up: your legacy, your reputation, all your hard work. I'm not giving anything up, Ryan said calmly. I'm choosing what matters most. I'm choosing my son. I want to be the father he deserves, not just the businessman everyone expects. You're ruining everything, David said, his voice cracking. 20 years of partnership, of friendship, all for a child who won't even remember these early years. He may not remember the details, Ryan said, watching Henry carefully stack blocks. But he will remember what it felt like to be loved, to be chosen, to matter more to his father than any deal or amount of money. That feeling will stay with him forever. The board will never welcome you back, David warned. Your name will be tainted in this industry. No one will work with you again. Then I'll create something new, Ryan replied confidently. Something better, something that helps families instead of just chasing profit. He hung up and turned to Henry, who was now trying to build a tall tower. Every time it fell, Henry giggled and started again, happy to create and share this moment with his father. You know what, buddy? Ryan said, getting comfortable on the floor and joining in. We're going to build something together, not a building or a business, but something even more important. We're going to build a family. Henry looked up at him with those bright, wise eyes, seeming to understand more than his age suggested. Daddy stay? He asked, voicing a fear many children carry deep inside. Yes, Daddy will stay, Ryan confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. Daddy is not going anywhere tonight, tomorrow, or ever. You're stuck with me, buddy. Henry clapped his hands with joy, then wrapped his arms around Ryan's neck in a hug that meant more than any deal ever could. In that embrace, Ryan felt all the ties to his old life disappear. He was no longer Ryan Matthews, the real estate businessman. He was now Henry's dad, and that was all that mattered. This choice shook Ryan's world, breaking down what he had built over 2 decades. His phone buzzed with urgent calls from board members, investors, and partners. The deal in Singapore fell through quickly, taking with it millions in expected earnings and Ryan's reputation as a reliable dealmaker in Manhattan. News outlets reported it within the hour, declaring Matthews' empire was in trouble, saying a billionaire left business for family. The story became popular on social media, sparking discussions about work-life balance, responsibilities as a parent, and what success really means. But later that evening, as Ryan sat in his son's nursery reading bedtime stories and enjoying Henry's joyful laughter, he felt a peace he had never found in any of his previous business meetings. Others might think he was making a mistake, but in that room, surrounded by his child's love and the woman who had helped them both, he felt happier than he had in years. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan Matthews was exactly where he wanted to be. The business community in Manhattan buzzed with whispers about Ryan Matthews' sudden change in fortune. The man who once commanded respect in every meeting was now the subject of quiet conversations and knowing looks. The failed deal in Singapore caused ripples in the real estate market, and Ryan's competitors were eager to take advantage. But in the penthouse overlooking Central Park, something different was happening. Ryan was discovering the joys of being a father, learning how to build trust, create security through being there, and lay a foundation of love strong enough to handle any situation. "Good morning, little sunshine," Ryan whispered as Henry stirred in his crib, his tiny face still sleepy. Their morning routine had changed a lot. Instead of rushing to get ready, Ryan now cherished these gentle moments, with his son's sleepy smile greeting him each day. Henry reached out with his little arms, making noises that were starting to make sense as words. "Daddy up!" he called, his vocabulary growing with all the love and attention he was receiving. "Up it is!" Ryan chuckled, lifting him and spinning him around until Henry's laughter filled the room. That sound was better than any applause or successful deal. Camila arrived at 8, just like she had for the past 3 months. But now she stepped into a lively home filled with laughter, where picture books covered the kitchen island instead of contracts, and colorful toys filled the living room. "How's our little builder today?" she asked, sitting down on the floor as Henry waddled over with his arms full of blocks. "Building towers," Ryan said, joining them on the floor and knocking down blocks in a fun way. "Crash!" Henry laughed, sending blocks tumbling across the carpet. Ryan found himself enjoying the delightful chaos his son created. something that had once bothered him. There's something lovely about starting fresh, about creating something new from what's left behind, Camila said, watching Ryan help Henry rebuild the tower. Ryan nodded, understanding her words. I've realized that failing isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the start of something better. The changes happening to him were real and immediate. The board of directors had removed him from the company in just 2 weeks. The penthouse was on the market, and the lifestyle that had once seemed so crucial was being taken apart. But during this hard time, something special was happening inside Ryan. As his business crumbled, his world as a father was thriving. He was learning new things, like how to comfort a crying child, find joy in small moments, and appreciate the precious everyday experiences that shape a life. I've been thinking about what I want to do next, he told Camila one afternoon while watching Henry stack blocks with great focus. I want to do something meaningful, something that really matters. What do you have in mind? She asked. A foundation, focused on helping children who need extra support, like Henry, who might not have the same care that you offer. I'd like to call it Sarah's Hope, in honor of Henry's mother. Camila's face lit up with understanding. That's beautiful, Ryan. She would be proud. I think she would be proud of who I'm becoming, Ryan replied, smiling as he watched Henry carefully place another block on his tower. For the first time in my life, I'm proud of myself too. This change was not just in Ryan. It was in Henry as well. The quiet child who once sat quietly in his nursery was transforming into a lively, curious toddler exploring his surroundings confidently, knowing he was loved. Ma, Henry said one morning, waddling over to Camila with his arms wide open. The nickname had come about naturally, showing the close bond they shared. Good morning, sweet boy, Camila greeted, picking him up and spinning him around. Are you ready for an adventure today? Venture, Henry repeated, clapping his hands with glee. The three of them had created their unique way of expressing love, with shared looks, jokes, and special rituals that kept them closely connected. Their days were filled with simple joys. They would walk through Central Park, where Henry would excitedly point at every dog and shout, "Puppy!" They enjoyed story time, where his favorite book was always just one more, and cooking experiments that often left a mess in the kitchen. Ryan was realizing that being a father wasn't about grand acts or expensive gifts. It was about being there consistently, enjoying the little moments that weave together a memorable childhood. Watch this, Henry proudly announced one afternoon, carefully balancing one block on top of another. When the tower stayed up, he looked at Ryan with so much pride that it took Ryan's breath away. That's amazing, buddy, Ryan said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. You're getting really good at building just like Daddy, Henry said. Ryan felt a joy he'd never known in any work achievement. But it was the quiet moments that touched Ryan the most. The way Henry curled up in his lap during story time, his relaxed little body completely trusting, and their sleepy chats at bedtime, where Henry would share the important details of his world, like how his teddy bear needed a certain blanket or how the nightlight had to shine just right. Daddy sing, Henry would ask, and Ryan found himself humming lullabies from online videos, his voice growing stronger and more confident every night. Camila watched the changes around her with the joy of someone who had planted seeds and now saw them grow into something beautiful. At the same time, she realized that her role in this family was changing, becoming more layered than she had initially thought. I need to tell you something, Ryan said one evening after Henry had gone to bed. They were sitting in the living room, enjoying a cup of tea in the warm silence that had become comfortable between them. What is it? Camila asked, noticing a change in his voice that made her heart skip. I'm falling in love with you, Ryan said simply. I know this makes things complicated. I know it changes how we relate to each other, but I needed you to know. Camila set down her cup, her hands shaking a bit. She felt it too, the way their time caring for Henry had turned into something deeper, how her heart raced when Ryan smiled, and how he was always on her mind after she left the penthouse. It does complicate things, she said softly, but that doesn't make it wrong. I don't want you to feel pressured, Ryan continued. Your relationship with Henry is the most important thing. I would never do anything to risk that. I don't want you to feel like I'm taking advantage of a sensitive situation, Camila replied. You've been through so much. I don't want to be a rebound from your past. They looked at each other across the table, two people who had found love in an unexpected place while working together to heal a child's heart. What if we take it slow? Ryan suggested. What if we let this grow naturally, like everything else has? Camila smiled, a bright smile that could light up the darkest room. I'd like that very much. The weeks after that were filled with careful steps towards something special. Ryan and Camila handled their growing feelings with the same care they used for Henry's development. There were no big moves or dramatic moments, just small connections that built into something strong and real. My family, Henry would say proudly whenever someone asked about the three of them, reaching for both Ryan's and Camila's hands. That simple statement always brought tears to their eyes. During these healing months, the Sarah's Hope Foundation began to take shape. What started as Ryan's desire to honor his late wife grew into a supportive community for families with special needs children. We're not just providing therapy, Ryan explained to potential donors, his enthusiasm clear. We're creating a community. We're showing families they're not alone, that their children are perfect just as they are, and that love is the strongest support of all. The first office for the foundation was simple but welcoming, a renovated brownstone on the Upper West Side that felt more like a home than an organization. Ryan insisted on cozy furniture, natural light, and play areas where children could feel free. This feels right, Camila said as they walked through during the final touches of renovation. Henry wandered between them, happily babbling as he explored the newly painted space. It feels like the start of something important, Ryan agreed, watching his son discover every corner with fearless curiosity. The first family to join their program was the Garcias, Maria, Elena, and their 4-year-old daughter, Sophia, who had Down syndrome. They arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Sophia hid behind her mother's legs while her parents looked around with a mix of hope and fatigue. Welcome to Sarah's Hope, Camila said, kneeling to meet Sophia's gaze. We're so glad you're here. Sophia peeked out cautiously, her dark eyes curious. Henry, now 2.5 and more confident, approached directly. Hi, he simply said, offering Sophia one of his favorite blocks. Want to build? What happened next was magic in its simplicity. Two children, each facing their own challenges, connected through the joy of play. Sophia took the block tentatively, then beamed, a smile that illuminated her face. She doesn't usually warm up to people so fast, Maria whispered to Camila, tears in her eyes. Children recognize kindness, Camila replied, watching as Henry patiently showed Sophia how to stack the blocks. They see beyond differences to the heart of who someone really is. Ryan watched from afar, his eyes misty as he saw his son welcoming another child who, like him, experienced life differently. This was what he had dreamed of for the foundation, not only therapy, but a real community where differences were celebrated. Over the following months, the foundation grew naturally. Word spread through parent groups, social media, and healthcare providers. The waiting list lengthened, but Ryan refused to rush the growth. Quality was more important than quantity, and every family that joined received the careful guidance that had helped Henry thrive. As they gained success, they faced new challenges. Media attention grew, bringing both praise and scrutiny. Funding became trickier as larger donors had their own goals. Ryan felt familiar temptations, the lure of quick growth, the pressure for big results, the tempting idea of national recognition. We're at a turning point, he told Camila one evening as they reviewed a proposal from a major foundation. They want to fund a national expansion, but they're asking for measurable outcomes and specific protocols. What's wrong with that? Camila asked, knowing the answer. Nothing if we're running a business, Ryan said, but everything if we're building a community. The moment we measure success by numbers instead of lives transformed, we become just another program. What does your heart tell you? Camila asked, recalling her earlier question during his struggles with the Singapore deal. My heart tells me Henry is thriving, not because we followed a set plan, but because we saw him as a complete person deserving of love, Ryan said. My heart tells me that every child in our program deserves that same recognition. Their choice to prioritize quality over quantity, depth over breadth, proved to be right. The longer children participated in the program, the more they improved not just in their challenges, but in their overall confidence, social abilities, and emotional strength. Henry himself became a shining example of the program's success. Now 3.5, he was articulate, kind, and socially confident. Though his early struggles with communication and social interaction hadn't vanished, they had transformed from obstacles into unique strengths. He sees things differently than other kids, his preschool teacher said during a parent meeting. He pays attention when others are having a hard time and has a great ability to include everyone in games. It's like he remembers how it feels to be left out. As the foundation reached its second anniversary, Ryan thought about how much his life had changed. The man who once measured success by how big his office was now saw it in happiness, discoveries, and families coming together. "Daddy, tell me the story again," Henry asked one evening as Ryan tucked him into bed. Their nightly routine included Henry's favorite tale, the story of how their family became a family. "Which part do you want to hear?" Ryan asked, settling in for their usual bedtime story. "The part where you didn't know you were looking for me," Henry said, his eyes shining with excitement. "Well," Ryan began, "once upon a time there was a dad who thought he had everything he needed. He lived in a tall glass tower and spent his days building things for others. But he felt lonely, even if he didn't realize it." "Because he didn't have me yet," Henry chimed in, "just like he always did here." "That's right," Ryan said. And then one night, he heard the most wonderful sound in the world, a little boy saying Dada for the first time. But the dad was nervous because he didn't know how to care for little boys. "So the angel came," Henry added. Ryan smiled. "Yes, the angel came, and she showed the dad that little boys don't need to be perfect. They just need to be loved. And she taught the little boy that dads don't need to be perfect either. They just need to try. And then we became a family," Henry concluded happily. "Yes, we did," Ryan agreed, kissing his son's forehead. "The best kind of family, one that chooses each other." Months later, while they were working to help other communities with their training programs, Ryan thought about how love was more than just a nice idea. It was the best way to help. Children who felt truly accepted learned to accept themselves. The moment came one evening when Ryan looked at Camila with clear intention. "I don't want to wait any longer to make this official," he said, taking out a small velvet box. "Camila, will you marry me? Will you be Henry's mom and my wife forever?" "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy on her cheeks. "Yes, of course, yes." Just then, Henry appeared in the doorway. "Are you crying happy tears?" he asked. "The happiest tears," Camila said, opening her arms for him. "Because Daddy asked me to marry him, which means we get to be a real family forever." Henry looked at each of them, thinking seriously. "But we're already a real family," he finally said. "We have been a real family since forever." "You're right," Ryan said, pulling them close. "We have been a real family. Now we're just going to make it official." As they sat on the couch with Ryan's arm around Camila and Henry nestled between them, the engagement ring sparkled in the light. Ryan felt a deep peace, knowing he had found his purpose. He was meant to be Henry's father. He was meant to love Camila. He was meant to help other families find what he had learned, that love is the most important job of all. Sometimes the greatest success doesn't come from reaching higher goals, but from diving deep into what matters most. Sometimes the biggest changes happen not through grand gestures, but through the daily choice to be present and love kindly. And sometimes, if you're very fortunate, a child's trust can show you that you were never broken. You were just waiting to be found. As Camila tucked Henry back into bed, Ryan listened to her softly singing a lullaby she had learned from her grandmother. The sweet melody floated through their home, filled with love. "Sleep, my child. Sleep, my sunshine. Sleep, little piece of my heart." The words expressed everything Ryan felt about their small family, the fierce protectiveness, the overwhelming care, and how love could turn everyday moments into something special. When Camila came back from Henry's room, She found Ryan in the kitchen making her evening cup of chamomile tea. It was a small tradition, but it showed how he appreciated the little things that made life beautiful. "Has asleep," she said, relaxing on the couch with her tea. "Completely worn out from trying to convince me that stuffed elephants don't need to sleep." "How did you argue against that?" Ryan asked, sitting next to her. "I told him that elephants have big dreams about peanuts and rivers, and that Ellie, Henry's favorite stuffed elephant, needed his rest to dream well." "That's clever," Ryan said, impressed. "You've become a great negotiator yourself." "I learned from the best," Camila replied, thinking of all the times she'd seen Ryan patiently talk through Henry's bedtime worries. The evening news played softly in the background, but they didn't pay it much mind. These quiet moments after Henry's bedtime had become their time to connect, reflect on the day, and plan for tomorrow. "I had an interesting talk with Dr. Martinez today," Camila said, referring to the pediatric neurologist they trusted. "She said something that made me think." "What was that?" Ryan asked. "She said that watching Henry over the past 3 years has changed how she sees all her patients. She realized that seeing a child grow not in spite of their differences, but because of them has shown her how much potential we miss when we focus on what's wrong instead of what's right." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "It's amazing how one child's story can influence so many others." "Not just Henry's story," Camila said gently. "Your story matters too. The journey of a parent learning to see their child clearly is just as important as the child's journey." "I guess they are connected," Ryan said. "Henry couldn't be who he was meant to be until I became who I needed to be." "And neither of you could have done it alone," Camila added. "Not from pride, but from understanding that healing often happens in relationships, and love is strongest when shared." Their moment was interrupted by Henry calling from his room. "Daddy, I need you." Ryan went to Henry's bedside, where he found his son sitting up with tears on his cheeks. "What's wrong, buddy?" "I had a scary thought," Henry said, reaching for his father with trust. "We'll always be here for you." "Tell me about it," Ryan said, lifting Henry onto his lap. "What if tomorrow I forget how to be brave? What if I go to school and I'm scared again?" The question touched Ryan's heart. Even at 4, Henry was dealing with the challenge of keeping courage in uncertain times. "So, you know what?" Ryan said, settling comfortably in the chair beside Henry's bed. "I used to feel that way too." "You did?" "Absolutely. When I was learning how to be a dad, I worried every day about not knowing what to do." "But you do know how," Henry protested. "I do now," Ryan agreed. "But I had to learn. And you know what I found out?" "What?" "Being brave doesn't mean you never feel scared. Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared." Henry thought about this carefully. "So if I'm scared at school, I can still be brave." "You can be the bravest kid in school," Ryan assured him. "Real bravery is being kind when someone is mean or helping a friend who's having a hard time or trying something new, even if you're unsure." "Like when I helped Emma stop crying on her first day," Henry said. "Exactly," Ryan said, proud of Henry's kind response to a classmate in need. "Okay," Henry said, his voice getting drowsy again. "I think I can remember how to be brave." "And if you forget," Ryan said, tucking the covers around his son, "Mama Mila and I will remind you. That's what families do. We help each other remember who we are, especially when we're scared." As Henry fell asleep, Ryan stayed in the chair for a few more minutes, feeling lucky to be Henry's father. The late-night talks, the questions revealing a young mind wrestling with emotions, the trust Henry showed by sharing his fears, these were the moments that made all sacrifices worthwhile. Camila looked up from her book with a knowing expression, as if she had been listening through the monitor. "He's going to be an amazing man," she said softly. "He already is an amazing little boy," Ryan replied. "Every day he teaches me something new about courage, kindness, and seeing the world differently." "Do you think he knows how much he's changed us? How much he's changed the world?" Camila asked. Ryan thought about it. "I think he knows he's loved," he said finally. "I think he knows he matters. Whether he understands the bigger impact, I'm not sure that's what truly matters right now." What's important is that he knows differences are meant to be celebrated, and that love is the strongest force we have. They enjoyed a comfortable silence, each lost in their thoughts about their journey together. 3 years ago, Ryan had been a successful but lonely businessman, not really knowing his son. Camila had dedicated herself to helping one family at a time. Henry had been a young child trying to find his way in a confusing world. Now they were a family, connected not by biology, but by choice. Not perfect, but perfect for each other. They had created something greater than individual success, a home filled with laughter and learning, a foundation that had helped many families, and most importantly, a love strong enough to face any challenge. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said suddenly, looking at Camila with an expression that made her heart race. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about this for months, and I finally know what to say." He took her hands gently. "3 years ago, you walked into our lives as Henry's therapist, but you've become much more. You've become my teacher, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life." Camila's eyes filled with tears as she realized what was happening. "I know we've talked about taking things slow, but I don't want to wait anymore to make this official." Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Camila Rodriguez, will you marry me? Will you be Henry's mama and my wife forever?" The ring was simple but beautiful, shining in the light. What took Camila's breath away was the certainty in Ryan's eyes, the love that had grown into something unbreakable. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, of course, yes." As Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, they heard a small voice from the hallway. "Are you crying happy tears?" Henry asked, standing at the door in his pajamas, looking sleepy. "The happiest tears," Camila said, opening her arms to him. "Why are you having happy tears?" Henry asked, climbing onto the couch. "Because Daddy asked me to marry him," Camila explained, "which means we get to be a real family forever." Henry looked back and forth between his parents, trying to understand. "But we're already a real family," he said seriously. "You're absolutely right," Ryan said, pulling both Camila and Henry close. "Now we're just making it official." "With a party?" Henry asked eagerly. "With the best party ever," Camila promised. "A celebration of how much we love each other and how grateful we are to be together. Can I wear my dinosaur tie?" "You can wear whatever makes you happy," Ryan assured him. "And can we have chocolate cake?" "We can have any cake you want," Camila said, laughing through her tears. "This is the best day ever," Henry declared, snuggling between his parents with the complete happiness of a child who knows he belongs. As they sat together on the couch, Ryan with his arm around Camila and Henry nestled between them, Ryan felt a deep peace. He knew he had found his purpose not just in his work, but in life itself. He was meant to be Henry's father. He was meant to love Camila. He was meant to help other families discover the power of love. Love was not just something nice. It was the most important thing what could change lives, heal hearts, and make a difference in the world. Outside their window, the city pulsed with ambition. But inside their home, they found joy in simple moments. Somewhere out there, other families were having a hard time connecting, understanding one another, and believing that love could overcome many things. But here in this small apartment, decorated with children's drawings and filled with warmth, 3 people sat together, surrounded by a love that made everything else possible. This love had helped a distant father learn to be there for his child, taught a struggling child how to thrive, and inspired a hard-working woman to achieve more than she ever thought possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new families to support, new chances to share the message that every child deserves love without conditions. But for tonight, they enjoyed the quiet happiness of a life well lived, where love was freely shared, proving that sometimes the most important successes happen not in meetings or bank accounts, but in the special space between hearts that have chosen to beat together. Ryan now understood that the true treasures of life were not made of steel and glass, but found in moments like these, ordinary yet precious, filled with perfect flaws. Sometimes true success doesn't come from reaching for lofty goals, but from diving deep into what truly matters. It can come through small, everyday choices to show up and love without conditions. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a child's trust can teach you that you were never broken. You just needed to be found. "Watch this," Henry said one afternoon, carefully stacking blocks one on top of another. When the tower stood tall, he glanced at Ryan, beaming with pride. "That's amazing, buddy," Ryan responded, his voice filled with real admiration. "You're so good at building." "Like Daddy," Henry said, and Ryan felt a joy he had never known through his work. Yet it was the simple moments that touched him the most, the way Henry would snuggle in his lap during story time, feeling safe and relaxed, and the sleepy chats they had before bedtime, where Henry would share his small worries like how a teddy bear needed a specific blanket or how a nightlight should be just bright enough. "Daddy, sing," Henry would request, and Ryan would find himself humming soothing songs he'd learned online, his voice growing stronger as the nights went by. Camila watched these moments blossom, feeling the joy of someone who has nurtured something beautiful. But she also recognized that her role in this family was changing, growing deeper and more complicated than she had first imagined. "I need to tell you something," Ryan said one evening after Henry had fallen asleep. They sat in the living room, sharing tea in the comfortable silence that had become familiar. "What is it?" Camila asked, sensing a change in his tone. "I'm falling in love with you," Ryan said plainly. "I know it complicates things and changes our relationship, but I wanted you to know." Camila put down her cup, her hands shaking slightly. She had felt it too. Their partnership in caring for Henry had become richer. Her heart raced when Ryan smiled, and she often thought about him after leaving each evening. "It does complicate things," she replied softly, "but that doesn't make it wrong." "I don't want you to feel pressured," Ryan continued. "Your relationship with Henry is the most important thing. I would never want to harm that. And I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of a tough situation," Camila replied. "You've been through so much change. I don't want to be just a phase from your past." They exchanged glances across the table, two people who had found love in unexpected circumstances while working together to help a child heal. "What if we take it slow?" Ryan proposed. "Let this grow naturally, like everything else between us?" Camila smiled, the kind of smile that could brighten the darkest spaces. "I'd like that," she said. Ryan was discovering that being a father wasn't about big gestures or costly gifts. It was about consistently being there for the little moments that built lasting memories. "My family," Henry would proudly declare when asked about the three of them, his tiny hand holding onto Ryan's and Camila's fingers. This simple statement always brought tears to their eyes. During these months of healing, the Sarah's Hope Foundation began to take shape. What started as Ryan's wish to honor his late wife's memory turned into a larger vision, a support system for families with children who have special needs. "We're not just offering therapy," Ryan explained to potential supporters, his passion shining through. "We're building community. We want families to know they're not alone, that their children are perfectly unique, and that love is the strongest help of all." The Foundation's first office was a cozy, renovated space that felt more like a home than an organization. Ryan insisted on comfortable furniture, natural light, and play areas for children to be themselves freely. "This feels right," Camila said as they walked through the location. Henry joyfully waddled between them, his excited chatter echoing off the freshly painted walls. "It feels like the start of something important," Ryan agreed while watching his son explore with curiosity. Their newfound happiness faced challenges when others began to notice their unique family. Once celebrated headlines now scrutinized Ryan's personal life, treating it as gossip. "Fallen Mogul's New Romance," a headline read, with a blurry photo of Ryan, Camila, and Henry in Central Park. The article brimmed with speculation and judgment, questioning if Ryan was using the situation to his advantage. "Don't read it," Camila urged, noticing Ryan staring at his phone, visibly upset. "They're making me look like an opportunist," he said, his voice tense. "People often have opinions about things they don't understand," Camila said calmly. "What matters is what we know to be true." But pressure was also coming from other areas. Former business partners showed their disapproval with silence. Ryan's country club membership quietly ended. Friends avoided him to dodge uncomfortable conversations. The harshest critiques came from those closest to him. His sister Charlotte, living with her traditional family in Connecticut, made her feelings known during a difficult phone call. "I don't understand what has happened to you, Ryan," she said, her voice full of disappointment. "You had everything, money, respect, and status, and now you are throwing it all away for what? A nanny? A child who isn't even what?" Ryan's voice was low. "Normal," Charlotte finished. "Henry clearly has some challenges. I know you want to be a good father, but hiring expensive therapists would be a better way to approach this than whatever this is you're doing." "This is called love, Charlotte," Ryan said, trying to keep calm despite the anger rising in him. "It's about being there for my son. It's about creating a family that means more than just social expectations and wealth." "Love doesn't pay the bills, Ryan. Love doesn't secure Henry's future. What happens when the money runs out? What happens when reality hits?" Those questions troubled Ryan long after the call ended. Was he being irresponsible? Was he so lost in the excitement of his new life that he was not providing enough for his son? Later that evening, Camila found him in Henry's nursery, sitting in a chair with his head in his hands while their son slept soundly in his crib. "Talk to me," she said softly, sitting on the floor beside him. "Maybe they're right," Ryan whispered. "Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe Henry deserves better than a failed businessman playing house." "Stop," Camila said firmly. "Look at him, Ryan. Really look at him." Ryan lifted his head to see his sleeping son. Henry looked peaceful, his small body relaxed and safe. Even while sleeping, there was a joy in him that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "Just 6 months ago, Henry barely spoke," Camila continued. "He didn't make eye contact, was uninterested in his surroundings. Now he laughs, plays, and calls you daddy with so much joy that it brings tears to my eyes. That's not because of money or status. That's because of love. That's because you chose to be his father instead of just providing for him." "But what about his future? College? The life he deserves?" Ryan asked. "The life he deserves is one where he feels loved for who he is, not just for what he achieves, where he learns that love is more important than money, and that being there for him matters more than reputation." Ryan reached down to touch Henry's soft hair, amazed by his son's innocence. "I want to give him everything," he said quietly. "You are giving him everything," Camila replied. "You're giving him yourself. That's what really matters." Though outside pressures kept coming, they also brought them clarity. In standing firm in their choices, Ryan and Camila found strength in their beliefs. They learned that true love needs the courage to face what others think. "Let them talk," Ryan said one morning as they read Henry a story about a little elephant who was different. "Let them question what we do. We know what we're building here, and it matters more than their approval." Henry looked up from the book and smiled at them, filled with trust and happiness. "My family," he said, reaching for both their hands. "Yes, baby," Camila whispered, her eyes sparkling with tears. "Your family." Spring came to New York like a promise finished, bringing shades of green and hope. Central Park filled with cherry blossoms that floated like snow around families enjoying longer days. For Ryan, Camila, and Henry, it was like a perfect symbol of their growing life together. The Sarah's Hope Foundation had found its rhythm, helping 25 families in its first 3 months. The brownstone was full of activity, children laughing during therapy, parents sharing stories in the lounge, and staff members focused on making a difference in every room. "We have a waiting list," Camila said one morning over breakfast, her eyes shining with the kind of tiredness that comes from doing what's important. 30 families want to join us." Henry, now 2.5, looked up from his careful arrangement of cereal pieces. "More friends?" he asked eagerly. "Yes, sweet boy," Ryan said, ruffling his son's hair. "More friends who need what we can offer." The foundation's success was based on a simple idea Ryan had learned from his journey. Every child deserves to be seen, valued, and loved just as they are. The program focused not on fixing children, but on helping families see the good in differences, the strength that comes from acceptance. "You know what I love most about our work?" Ryan told a reporter from a newspaper doing a story on career changes. Every day I see small miracles, a child finding their voice, a parent discovering a community, a family realizing they are not broken, but whole. The article showed Ryan as a man who had traded material success for something far more valuable, the chance to make a real difference, one family at a time. But the greatest reward came from Henry himself. The little boy who had once sat quietly in his nursery now chattered away, asking endless questions and facing the world with curiosity as someone who felt safe and loved. "Daddy," Henry asked one night while Ryan tucked him into bed, "why do some kids come to our place?" Ryan smiled at how his son described the foundation. "Some kids need extra help learning to talk or walk or play, and some families need to understand that being different is not bad." "Like me?" Henry asked simply. "Exactly like you," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me that being different makes you special." "I'm special," Henry said proudly, like he was putting away an important lesson. "The most special boy in the world," Ryan whispered, kissing Henry's forehead. The financial reality of their new life was very different from Ryan's past. The penthouse had sold, replaced by a cozy but smaller apartment close to the foundation. The fleet of fancy cars turned into a dependable SUV with child seats and juice stains. Expensive dinners were now home-cooked meals shared around a table covered in Henry's artwork. But Ryan realized that wealth wasn't just about money. He felt rich in ways he had never imagined, rich in laughter, in bedtime stories, and in the feel of a sleeping child in his arms, rich in purpose, in community, and in watching love change lives. "Do you miss it?" Camila asked one night as they worked together at the foundation, sorting applications and planning programs. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," Ryan admitted. "It felt easier when success was just about numbers on a page, but I don't miss feeling empty, lonely, or being a stranger to my own son." "Any regrets?" Ryan looked through the glass partition to see Henry playing with blocks, happily chatting to himself as he built tall towers. "It took me a long time to understand what you taught me that first day. Love isn't just something you add to life. Love is life." The first anniversary celebration for the foundation took place in the same hotel ballroom where Ryan had once spoken about sacrifice and success. But this time the room was filled with a different kind of achievement families who had found hope, children who had found their voices, and parents who realized they weren't alone. Ryan stood at the podium and looked out at an audience filled with children of different abilities, parents who had found support in their shared experiences, and staff members who measured success through smiles instead of money. In the front row, Camila held Henry on her lap, both smiling with pride. "A year ago," Ryan began, his voice calm and warm, "I was in a room like this and talked about success. I thought it was all about making more money and getting more recognition. I was wrong." He paused, his eyes searching the crowd until they landed on Henry. His son waved happily, blissfully unaware that he was the reason for everything. "Real success," Ryan continued, "is not about what we gain, but what we give. It's not about empires we build, but the hearts we touch. It's not about putting space between us and others, but about bringing them close." The room fell silent. Many parents felt a connection to his words. They had learned, just like Ryan, that the most important victories sometimes look like losses, that true strength lies in being open, and that love grows when shared. The Sarah's Hope Foundation exists because a young boy taught me that love isn't a distraction from important work. Love is the most important work. Because a wise woman showed me that children don't need fixing. They need to be understood. Because families like yours have shown that community is less about being near each other and more about understanding one another. The applause was gentle but steady, coming from genuine recognition rather than just appreciation. These claps weren't just for a speech. They were acknowledgments of shared truth, lives changed by the choice of love over fear. "I want to read you something," Ryan said, taking out a folded piece of paper. "This is from a thank you note I received last week. It says, 'Before we found Sarah's Hope, I thought my daughter was broken. Now I know she was just waiting for the world to catch up to her.'" His voice wavered slightly as he read the words, remembering how he once saw Henry as a challenge but now saw him as a treasure. "That's what we're all about here," he said. "We don't fix children. We change how we see them. And in doing so, we realize they never needed fixing at all. Henry, bursting with excitement, climbed off Camila's lap and waddled toward the stage. Without hesitation, Ryan stepped down and picked up his son, holding him close as the crowd stood up. "Hi, everyone," Henry said into the microphone, his clear voice filling the hallway. "This is my daddy, and I love him very much." The audience responded with more than just applause. There were tears, laughter, and a pure joy from witnessing love in its simplest form. This was more than just a father and son. It was hope made real. "Thank you," Ryan whispered into the microphone, holding Henry closely. "Thank you for teaching us what family truly means." The evening ended with families spread out across the hotel's garden terrace, children playing under sparkling lights while parents shared stories and staff cleaned up with smiles. Ryan stood at the edge of the terrace, watching Henry chase after fireflies with other children, their laughter mixing with the peaceful sounds of the city below. "Look at him," Camila remarked, joining Ryan at the railing. "Remember when he wouldn't even look at us?" "I remember thinking we were lost," Ryan replied softly, feeling both the old pain and new joy. Now he watched as Henry gently caught a firefly, looked at it with wonder, and then let it go. The kindness in that act took Ryan's breath away. "Now I know," he said, "that love doesn't find the lost. Love shows us that we were never lost at all. We were just waiting to find each other." A year later, the Sarah's Hope Foundation would help 200 families. Ryan would be invited to speak at events about balancing business success and personal happiness. Articles would be written about how he changed from a corporate leader to a social entrepreneur. But none of that mattered as much as this perfect moment, when a father, a son, and the woman who taught them both how to love stood beneath the stars, surrounded by the community built on hope and determination. "Daddy," Henry called from across the terrace, "come see the pretty lights." Ryan looked at Camila and saw everything he had been searching for: home, purpose, acceptance, and the kind of love that makes everything possible. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. "Our son wants to show us something amazing." As they walked toward Henry, Ryan reflected on the journey that brought them here. He started off measuring his worth in money and status, believing that love was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now he understood that love is not something you earn. It's something you choose every day in both big and small moments. "Look," Henry exclaimed, pointing at the fireflies dancing above the flowers. "They're like little stars that came down to play." Ryan knelt beside Henry, marveling at the joy in those brown eyes that first captured his heart. "They're beautiful, buddy, just like our family," Henry said with a child's wisdom. "We're all beautiful, too." "Yes, we are," Ryan whispered, wrapping his arms around Henry and Camila. "We are truly beautiful." The scene pulled back slowly, showing the three of them silhouetted against the warm glow of the terrace lights. A family formed not from obligation but from choice, love, and the courage to believe that everyone is worthy of acceptance and celebration. The greatest success isn't always about achieving more. Sometimes it's about lifting someone else up. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can build isn't a business, but a connection of hearts. And sometimes, if you're lucky, a child's love can show you that you were never broken at all. You were just waiting to be found. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Join our channel for more stories that show the strong impact of love, family, and starting over. Remember, the most meaningful title you can have isn't found on a business card. It's said softly by someone who sees you as family. Good night. May your journey towards love and healing be filled with kindness, bravery, and the true happiness that comes from making the right choices.